Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week, we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiphany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of For the Record. And today we have a whole new episode with a lot of interesting, novel, just crazy, introspective things to talk about with a licensed esthetician turned holistic healer, guru, aura, energy specialist, Mikaela MacLean. And she is with ToxJosh Studios out of Brentwood, Tennessee, but also lives in Washington. And she's here with us today to tell us all about this incredible niche that she's found, human design, really treating patients from the inside out, thinking about how we look at the whole person. And by the way, she's also a ballet dancer with an acclaimed career in that. She's been an esthetician doing medical procedures for nearly 20 years and has transitioned over to this other side of the fence. And here today to give us all the deets on the ins and outs of her new practice and what she's doing now. So, Mikaela, welcome to our show.
Hi, Tiphany. Thank you for having me.
Well, the fun thing is that you and I did a human design session for me, I don't know, a few months ago. And I swear I thought you were a psychic. I got off the phone with you and I told someone, I said, the woman is a psychic. Like from my birthday and the time that I was born, you knew things about me that people who've known me my whole life wouldn't be able to know, wouldn't have ever come to the conclusion from that you just knew and instinctively from this design session that we did together. And so from that moment forward, I was a believer in what you're doing. So walk us through from a high level. I know that you're in this new thing now, but where did you start? How did you even get into aesthetics from the beginning?
Okay. But I should just pause and say I love that because I think that's it. It's especially for people who are very science minded. And I know you are, I am, which is kind of always the funny thing to be so into this, but, it's so interesting as we go. I'm sure we'll get into it, but how accurate all of this is and how helpful it is. But for me with the aesthetics, industry, I came from a ballet background, and I think that that's where sort of those, perfectionists wanting to improve, wanting things to be beautiful sort of tendencies really came from. And so when all of that ended for me, I had a career ending injury at like, funny to say it, but at like 15, 16 years old, I then was sort of lost and was like, what do I want to do even with my life? Because when I was really little, I only wanted to be a doctor. Then it was a ballet dancer. and that looked like I was going to have a career in it. And then just sort of like, I don't know. I'm really good in school, but there's nothing that was like my thing, nothing that deeply sparked anything in me. And then it would have been my early 20s. I discovered like skin was, I'd always been into it and beauty, of course, but had never realized that could be a real career. Everybody nowadays knows that it was, but back 20 years ago, that wasn't so commonplace. So went to school, did that, always worked in the medical fields and dermatology and then later plastic surgery. And that's sort of where catching us up to essentially today, just transitioning basically out of it in the last year or two.
Well, I think about you going from plastics to derm and all the things that you've done before. And we've talked about this, you and I. You were at Aesthetic Next this year, did a brilliant presentation for our audience there about this idea that, beauty is pain. I feel like we all subscribe to that. In this industry, we just expect that to look beautiful. You have to go through a lot of traumatic things. And that's kind of the opposite of how you feel about things. And so when did you make this mental leap from the devices, the lasers, the pills and all these things to now like this more energy, holistic kind of mentality?
Again, I think it's that background of I had an eating disorder when I was young, was anorexic and, mental health, depression, anxiety, all the things. I think all the pressure that we put on ourselves of like to be perfect. And then and again, it's in my human design chart. I have that trait number of times over and I'm like, gosh, wow, that would have been helpful to know early on, to know that you're going to lean that way. And so I think it was just over the number of years of like always trying to correct myself. I have literally done all the things, from the injectables to the lasers. I think there's a disassociation with the body to the point that I have very high pain tolerance. And so doing things, not being bothered by it, surgical, didn't matter. And then at the end of it all, you're like, there's still a part of me that's not happy. I I'm not anyone that's going to knock doing those things because I still love it. I still want my, injectables and I want my laser done, but I don't rely upon that solely as like my singular source of self-esteem, I guess. And I think it was just over time my own personal interest being into all of these other very holistic and spiritual practices, finally kind of bringing it full circle and realizing, gosh, there's so many people that work in this field, and a lot of people I think operate they themselves as a provider from that maybe even body dysmorphic disorder sort of realm. And how healthy is that passing it on to our patients and our clients, and so I think eventually I kind of got to a happy, healthier, nobody's perfect, healthier place for myself, and just sort of woke up to it and was like, wow, like this is a huge thing in this industry that sort of needs to be looked at and addressed. Because I'm not saying to stop doing those things, but we need to have a healthy balance. And I know everybody that works in it, without a doubt, you've had those patients or clients that come and they're never happy. They have amazing results and they're still not happy, and it's because there's something inside them that is lacking. It has nothing to do with the external, and like I said, that just needs to be looked at.
It's odd that you mentioned BDD because I just came from AmSpa this past week, and of course, it's a big hot topic. And I think about, I'm jumping way ahead in our plan here today, but I think about for aesthetic spas, medical spas, plastic derms today, is it almost a business mission critical thing to have on staff, on site, someone like you to help patients who come in and present with a BDD type, syndrome of some sort to say, wait a minute, let's stop and think about you as a person first. And then let's next, after that's all completed, go on to the aesthetics part of your focus. Do you think that's something that we should be looking at as an industry to have more like psychological or inner beauty type, people on staff?
Honestly, I really do, and that is my personal secret hope and mission, is that something like that will start to evolve, maybe from what I've started doing. But I think it's really important. When I was in plastics and going around with one of my surgeons that I work very closely with, I remember having consults where he, that was his background, was psych, and talking to patients and really seeing, and it just fascinates me because again, that's what my chart's about, is like really studying people. And I'm like, wow, I'm case study number one, my own, and then looking at other people sort of suffering with that same stuff. It's like, wow, you could be so happy. We could give you the results you want 100%, but if you're not seeing it yourself mentally, it's just never gonna work out. So I think yeah, absolutely, having people, or even having the providers themselves, the estheticians, the injectors, whomever, have a little bit of more understanding with this type of stuff so that they can really relate to and help that patient more than just, here, I injected some stuff in you and you should be, Miss Mary Sunshine. And it just is not going to work that way.
So I think about even my own team at Aesthetic Record. We just did a personality test, like whole big thing over Christmas break, and sort of going through who we are, how do we sell to our customers, deal with each other. I think about what you're doing as a missing piece. We talked a lot about personality traits and, how do you want to talk to me? How do I want to talk to you? And I think about there's this whole like spiritual level that we never discuss in business. Like corporately, it's not talked about. We almost like shun it, like, oh gosh, that's too warm and fuzzy for us. Don't do it. But I think about from even our session, I went to my partner immediately and said, gosh, look what I just learned about myself. Like, let me look at your chart. We kind of went online and kind of looked at it. I said, I'm no Mikaela, but I'll give you my best guess here. And kind of married our things together and said, wait, this is why we don't get along. This is why we fight about these things. This is why you love it and I hate it. And it was immediately apparent for me that we're missing as a human race this like connector that's not about personality types and behavioral types and all these like very corporate rote memory kind of things that we talk about. So how do you bring that idea to like companies, not just in aesthetics, but to companies in general, to practices, to your, staff? How does this transcend just patients?
So I've actually worked with some practices and even some aesthetic companies, some cosmetic companies that have brought me in. Usually it starts with one person being very interested, doing a session with me, and they're like, wow, okay, I see the value in how this could play out in all realms of my life. And that's really it. It's like at the core of it, it's really meant for children. It's if you can raise a child according to all of these things, how I mentioned before. If I had known XYZ about myself from a very young age, I wouldn't probably have the same hangups that I do about it now at, like 40 years old. So I think going into practices, it is amazing, yes, to help with one-on-one with your patients, sure, but really learning internally what everybody is truly how you work, how you need to communicate. And the cool thing is that this is not a personality type issue. You know, this is not something that you have subjectively tested for. It's like, as you mentioned, it's like your birth date, time, and place. I don't even need to know your name, and I can look at this chart and know things. And no, it's not psychic. It's not fortune telling or predicting or anything like that. It's just, hey, you know, Tiphany, you are wired this way. You've been wired this way. These are the things you're going to be good at. Maybe these are the things you're going to struggle with a little bit. And it's just, it's mind boggling how effective that all of a sudden becomes, where you're like, I'm not going to pressure this person for an immediate decision, or, you know, this person is not going to have the same energy level that this one does. Or, I mean, it's just, it's like I could go so many different
It's
directions
just
with it.
mind blowing. That's what it
It
is.
really is. Yeah, it really is.
Well, you know, if I think about this, you're like a beauty therapist, not to make light of what you do, but I feel like that's really what, you know, beauty meaning both inner and outer. I think you have a therapy mindset to this whole thing, which we'll talk about a little bit, you know, more about the actual human design part of it and all the things you incorporate into it. But from that perspective, you know, when you decided on, you know, Monday the 25th, I'm going to quit being a medical esthetician and doing medical things, so now I'm going to be doing this instead. Was there fear? Was there, you know, a concern of like who will buy these sessions? Who's going to come to do this with me? Like, what was that transition like for you mentally? And I kind of know about your human design because we talked a lot about it in our session. But you're like me; you're hardwired to like succeed and achieve and all these things. What was that like for you? Was it a struggle?
It really was. It was not like I'm just gonna stop doing one thing and start doing the other. I had yet another career-ending injury, you know, or we could kind of label it as such. I've always had carpal tunnel, had surgery prior, fell like a little bit over a year ago and hurt my wrist. It gets really snowy where we live and icy. And so it sort of stopped things. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, now I have to just do this and just rely upon this. And absolutely nervous about who would even be interested in it, who would want this. And, you know, part of my own chart is about kind of marching to the beat of my own drummer. It's like I am literally designed to be somebody who does something different, who is into this type of stuff. And I'm like, wow, you know, that knowing my own chart gives me so much comfort. That's like, even if nobody gets me right now, I think eventually there will be some, you know, the tides will change and it will come around.
And boy, have they. I mean, I feel like you've exploded with this. You're on people's Instagram lives, you're doing podcasts, you're kind of everywhere because I think people are so hungry for some kind of an understanding of themselves, where they fit in the world, what they should be contributing to the world, where their hangups are. Like I thought about, you know, even in our own environment here in our company, again, it was so telling just personality types. Like, could this make our lives better or easier to just know these little things, these little factoids? And I feel like you're giving that to people in a way that's very unique and different to your point. But, you know, thinking about that from a getting started perspective, if I'm an esthetician right now in a clinic, like give us an idea of what this actually looks like. As you know, if I'm never have heard about this ever before, walk us through what your sessions, what human design, what this whole concept looks like in practice.
So it is kind of like this huge subject.
Yeah, sorry,
I
sorry for the loaded question. I know it's a huge topic.
it really is. And I was thinking about that ahead of time. I'm like, this is the type of thing. And again, I'm designed for it, like that you could study for years and years and years and years, and you're still like, you know, it's a never ending rabbit hole. But to extract the high level stuff that really starts somebody off correctly, you know, you're looking at something called your aura type or your energy type. And that really just describes how you are meant to exchange your energy with the world around you. And the funny thing is, it's actually quite simple concepts. You just realize how much the world, how society, how just, you know, our way of just generally thinking has totally taken us off track. And you're like, there's actually a much easier way of sort of going about life. We're all just not doing it. So when you kind of get yourself in touch with that, you're like, wow, okay. I'm really, you know, I know you and I both, we're generators, like we're designed to be people who love our work and really throw ourselves into our work. And you're like, okay, wonderful. If I woke up in the morning and was like, oh, I have to go to work, you know, then I'm clearly not on the right track. But when I get out of bed, and this is the case for me now, it's like I get out of bed excited. And I'm like, I can't wait. I can't wait to go and start working and working with people. That's a very exciting thing. So we start with that. You look at something called strategy and authority, meaning, okay, how do I actually go approach it? What is my what's my, I always call it your boss. You know, everybody gets told, go with your gut, trust your gut. Some of us are gut people, but there are 7 other things that it could be. And then you realize, whoa, I have been suppressing that because that's all anybody ever hears. So there's a lot about it is really about what's called the deconditioning process. It's like stripping everything away that's not you to come back to what really is you. And those things, when I tell them to somebody in a session, and I'm just going through like very clinically in a way, you know, like I'm reading chart notes, you know, like you're going to absolutely resonate with that stuff. And then all of a sudden it feels very comforting, feels like you're at home. You're like, oh, whoa, if I could operate from this place all the time, this is going to feel very freeing. I can stop pretending, you know, contorting to be all the things that I'm not and just really come back to who I am. And that's a really beautiful place to operate from, you know, in life in general.
Well, I think about that from even myself. It's like permission. I felt like I had permission after our session to be me, right? Permission to do the things that I want to do the way that I want to do them based on what feels most comfortable for me. But I, to your point, need to be deconditioned for like years. I'm a chameleon. I flex to other people because I feel like to get what I need done, I have to give them what they want, often sacrificing what I need and what I want. I become a martyr. I'm like, we discussed this in our session. I am like the quintessential martyr. I will die on the vine, fall on the sword, whatever it takes to get the job done, to make you succeed because I just want to get it done. And I think what you're telling people in these sessions is like, you have permission. Like, it's okay to decide who you want to be and go be it. Like, it's okay. Whether you're from your gut, from your brain, from your heart, whatever's leading you, let it lead you. Because I do feel like, to your point, in jobs I've had before, I'd wake up in the morning and say, gosh, I don't want to go to work. And you just felt it in your body, in your bones. This is not the thing for me. But you couldn't leave, right? Golden handcuffs, all we talk about this in pharma. You're making too much money. It's too good of a job. You can't do it. And then I come here and every day I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like my heart feels fulfilled. My body feels fulfilled. I feel healthy despite being completely never sleeping and not being healthy because I feel like my cup is full. And so I think you're onto something here. Even as a provider, I think about burnout in medical right now. These nurses are so burned out, especially those who are doing COVID units in the hospital. Bedside nursing is a disaster, and we all know that. Like, I feel like you could be giving this to the world right now. Like, we need to put you on a main stage because people need to hear the things that you're saying. But if I wanted to go learn how to do this, to be like you, like, where do you even start? Because you do yoga, you've got all these pieces coming into this from all walks of your life. Where does a person go to learn to do the sessions, to actually do what you're doing in the sessions?
That's a really great question because, like I said, you could study this forever and still just be scratching the surface. And so that's actually something that I'm working on is trying to create, because this is my field that I come from. I don't really want to. I shouldn't say that, but just like I'm not really trying to reach the outside. I'm trying to work within our realm and help those of us, because the way I see it is estheticians, injectors, all of just aesthetic professionals. I'm like, everyone is a healer. We're here. You go out and touch people, and I'm always like, I'm one person. I want to be able to sort of pass the high level stuff on that's really going to help people. No, you don't need to do it to the level that I do. That's really not the case. But to be able to get enough of the training and tools into people's hands that then they can go and pass that on to every patient that they work with is really that ripple effect that I'm hoping for. And I think that's what's going to help sort of change our perception, give people the permission slip to really be themselves. And again, I'm like, oh my goodness, wouldn't you love to work on somebody who felt good about themselves? And building, one of the coolest things I think too about it is like building a relationship, building connective tissue with your patients and your clients. When you know them to that level, as you said, you're like, oh my God, she knows all these things about me. I'm like, well, if you went and you laid down on my table and, I'm doing a facial on you, but we're able to start a conversation about that type of stuff, wouldn't you be like, I don't want to go to anybody else. This person knows me. They get me. They understand me. They're going to help like nurture me. I'm like, that's what I'm hoping for. So working on that type of stuff, working on a digital course to help provide that, working on some in-clinic trainings and things for people that want to bring this stuff into their practice.
Well, if you've been to therapy, anyone listening, I have done a few sessions myself. It's such a different vibe. If you go to like a psychologist or psychiatrist, it's almost like they're trying to work backward, right? What's your problem? Let's try to fix it. Like, it's a backward mentality from go to the end and then let's try to work yourself into being a better person. I feel like what you're saying in these sessions is, I don't care what your problems are that you're facing right now. I'm going to give you what you come to the table with, and then let's see how we apply those gifts and those things to what's happening in your life. So it's almost like it's a reverse idea of like therapy. But I'll tell you, I walked out of our session feeling much more confident with my decisions about how to live my life than I did going to therapy. We only had one session, by the way, guys, just one session. And Mikaela does this, multiple sessions with people, throughout their lives, throughout years and years, I'm sure. But for me, it was just one session. I was like, wow, there's a different world out there, a different way to get counseling, therapy, express your stress, live without having to go lay on a couch and and tell someone about your love life, like you do in therapy. So, how does this work for, like, let's say it's me, and this is a great example. Do I come back for more sessions? Do we go back over time? Is that you give me homework? How do you engage with the patient long term and not just like that first sort of eye opening experience?
I definitely have people as I've been doing this longer that come back around. I would say that's one of the big differences where, before I had my patient base that I had 15 plus years and I saw them once a month, every month till the end of time. And so it's very different because this is very sort of, I'm always like hesitant to say it, but it's like what people always say to me. They're like, it changed my life. So this big life changing type of thing, like you said, like therapy type of work, although never negative. It's always just like, I'm here to pump you up. And it's so, I think people sort of hear that like, ooh, I'm like, no, you're going to come in, you're going to feel like 10 times better when you're done with me, so then you get to go out in the world and kind of continue to feel that. I think there are some people that definitely, they take that one and then they run with it and they feel amazing. But as time goes on, I have started to notice some people are so intrigued by it because it's very fascinating. They want to know the deeper layers, or they need that bit, maybe a bit more coaching with it, of really understanding. Oh, that's right. Remind me again of how I sort of operate. And just I don't want to say neither handheld, but it's like any type of patient care. You're like, you can't necessarily just write the script and then they're off. It's a you have to sort of work with them over time and help them feel into that a little bit more, just deeper, really deeper, if anything.
Well, and there's so much in this session. I mean, my goodness, I walked away from that thing with my mind is like blown, head spinning. Like I mean, you said in the beginning, okay, you're gonna want to take notes for this, and you weren't kidding. I
Yeah.
was like typing away furiously because there's just so much to take in. I feel like, I was laughing about your Mercury's in retrograde post on Instagram. You and ToxJosh both have been posting about Mercury for I don't know how long. But my
Yeah.
goodness, it's so true. Like knowing even that kind of stuff, like, man, things are off for me. I wonder why they're off. Like, oh, that's what it is. Like, I feel like there's just so much to unpack there that for the person like me who wants to know everything about everything, I could never. I mean, I feel like we just barely even like popped the top on this thing. We haven't even started to unpack all my baggage. There's a lot
Yeah.
of baggage, guys. So I feel like this could be, I mean, this could be a thing for, an aesthetics spa or clinic to say, this is like your long, just like you come in and get your filler topped off, come in and get your, your heart, your soul, your mind topped off. Like it's almost the same kind of a cadence for the practice who buys into this. And I do feel like to kind of go down that road, some folks listening saying, "What the heck are she talking about? What is this, hocus pocus?" How do you combat that? Knowing that so many of us have been through this with you, we believe it so wholeheartedly. How do you tell a practice owner, this is real? Like I've got results. People are changing, their lives are changed. How do you kind of come at that and do it in the Mikaela way where you aren't negative and you are very positive?
Right, right. That's so funny because I think if anything, that's my one way of getting it across to people. I'm like, you just have to do it. You have to do it, have that suspension of disbelief. And then typically people are like, my mind is blown by by the end of it. Um, I think, even if a practice manager or someone was like that, it's like, that's fine for you, but how many of your people that are coming in are searching for that thing, never quite getting there. You could be providing that to patient, whether you buy into it or not. There's a lot of people that are very, very interested in this. And another astrological event, it's like Neptune is in Pisces. It's like, this is, people are more, there's no question, people are more open to this type of stuff than they ever have been in the past. And everyday people, not, I mean, I would wear scrubs and go to the clinic and be doing this type of work. It's like, it doesn't have to be scary to anybody. It's just insanely helpful. And I think it's like the proof's in the pudding. With the people that I've worked with, and everybody comes out of it sort of just evangelical about it. They're like, this was amazing. So I'm like, I don't know. I'm just so easy about it. Like, well, try it, see what you think.
Well, and you've done some live reading. I say readings like you're a fortune teller. I don't mean that, but sessions on Instagram where I think a couple of our mutual friends in the industry, you've done their live, their sort of live session. You've gone through all the pieces, and I think people walk away from that thinking, wow, that was like incredibly insightful. Like not even their own session, right? Like watching you do someone else's session, they're just like, huh, that's so cool. But as I think through that, one of the things that you and I share is like you've got to be different in this industry to survive. You can't be a copycat. You can't have the same brand. If your practice is doing the same ho hum as everyone else's, you're never going to survive in aesthetics because there's just too many people coming in right now that can all wield a syringe with the best of them. How do you position this, or even thinking about your own brand as like the differentiator? Like, is that what people, as a practice owner coming in, forget the idea of I believe in it or not. How does it set the practice apart from marketing, from patient recruitment? Like, what's the kind of the thing that you're using to get folks in the door, even in your own practice?
I love that question because, again, I just point back to my own chart. I'm like, this is what I'm meant to do. There was no choice of like, I have to be different. You just are, and they're very clear markers and charts about these things. And so that's honestly one of my favorite things about it, is that I can look at someone's chart and, say it's a clinic, somebody who owns a clinic, or an esthetician or whatever. And you're like, I can really go through this and look at the things that you might not realize are super important, that truly on an energetic level, like you just said, wheel the syringe with the best of them. You're doing a hydrofacial, girl over the road's doing a hydrofacial. It doesn't really matter. It's like, what is it that's bringing somebody into you, and how can you cultivate that and turn the volume up on it? And that's really where you get into the energetics. You're like, I know you and I both, people won't know what this means, you and I are both a line one, like knowledge people. We're studiers. We have to know the stuff, right? And so you and I would be people that I'd be like, highlight that. I know when I post about things that are way more knowledge based, let's say, multiple slides, but I'm going into detail. I'm like, those are the things that get saved and shared, not the other stuff. So I'm like, I'm playing to my strengths. Someone else might not be that type of person. They're very naturally gifted, not at all the things. They'll have something specific. Somebody else might be a role model type. You just go through all these elements and then realize you're like, I'm trying to play to like all these other things that I'm not. Come back to what I'm best at, what comes very naturally to me, that just feels like slipping on that favorite pair of sweatpants. And you're like, oh, this is actually what people want from me. You're like, it's like light bulbs start going off. You're like, exactly what feels good to me is exactly what other people are going to seek out in me. And then that's where you start to differentiate. You're like, we could be two amazing injectors, but you know what? When I play to those things, all of a sudden I get I'm attracting them too energetically. I'm attracting the right people that want to work with me, rather than me pretending. I saw this girl on Instagram doing really well with these types of posts. I want to carry all of her products. I'm going to try to do it exactly the way she's doing. You're like, you're never going to be successful. You might be okay, but you're never going to really take off doing that, because it's not authentic. That person is actually being authentically themselves, and that's what you see. That's what's inspiring. That's that sparkle. When they're doing it, it works. When you do it, it falls flat. So again, everybody's got their beautiful things about them. They just need to sort of have it picked out and identified for them.
I was sitting here thinking through while you were saying that, MLMs. Guys, go with me for a second. I look at friends of mine who I'm like, she couldn't get herself out of a barn in the middle of a tornado to save her life. She's just not, these people who, these people, right? They're in MLMs and they're like gazillionaires. Like their attraction marketing is the stuff of legend. They have more customers coming in to buy their soaps and their foundations than you could even think about. And after our session, I thought about that. How come I could never do that? Because that's what they're good at. They thrive in that. Like, I'm a mess. My hair's in a bun. My life's a wreck, but buy my product. People love that. It's their authentic self. They're all over Instagram lives, in their house, makeup on, curling their hair, all the things that I could never do, because I could never be comfortable doing any of that. It will never happen. If you see me on Instagram live, it's because I have been forced to do it by just like, I don't know, it's just not my thing. But I have friends who are just so successful. And I think about an MLM as a prime example. Those people know their strength, they lean into it. And because of it, they are thriving. And it's just never going to be for me. And so I think, you come back to social media in our industry, it's the same way. people who are doing these TikToks and dancing and having fun, people who are doing these crazy, like intellectual, educational posts and like what you're doing. People love that too. It's like people love different things for different people, but whatever it is that you do well, when you do that thing, I think you get much better results than when you try to do things that are not your natural person, right? Not your natural vibe. And so I see it in social media all the time as well. I'm sure that even with you, like you're probably doing things that you don't love to do, but you have to for your brand.
And it's always clear of what does work and what doesn't work. It's like when you, and it's easy to say, be authentic. And a lot of people are like, they don't really know what that means, or they don't know, quote, who they are. And some people are more chameleon types, and that's okay too. So, again, when you look at somebody's design, you're like, you can really help them dig through that, pick that out, and then again, understand themselves so that really starts to shine through. But before earlier this morning, I was talking to my friend Ashley Curtis, Ageless Ashley, and we were chatting about that. And she is a projector, different type than you or I. And their whole thing is like, they're not really designed to be keeping up with the rat race. And she was like, in all this last year that we've really been doing tons of sessions and working on this on a continual basis, she's like, that right there, finding that out was like, again, a permission slip, like, oh, I don't have to do this. And then she's like, everything has been more successful. Like everything for me has just kind of like snowballed in a really beautiful way. I don't have to be the doer. I can hire people. And she's like, wait, I've been making more money. And all these wonderful things have happened because, again, I started to lean into who I actually am. So again, it's like proof's in the pudding.
Well, and this show's about survival, right? We talk about surviving in aesthetics because it's a cutthroat industry. And I think what you just said about Ashley is the prime example of, because she's taking the time to do it her way that she wants to do, what's best for her, she's probably a lot better when she's actually showing up for things, right? She's taking her rest, her mental break, getting her things together before she comes back to work the next day. And so she's recharged. I, for one, don't ever do that, right? I'm not a recharger. My batteries are going all the time, which I'm sure is probably not a good thing, but it's a different world for me. Like she and I have very different styles, but she's being successful with hers. I'm at least surviving with mine. I think it's finding what works for you. But to what you said before, your authentic self, people have no idea what that is. I don't know what that is for me. I have no idea what my authentic self is because I've become a character, as we all do. If you're in a public life, you become kind of a character that people want you to be in this play that you're in for so many years that you're like, wait a minute, am I that character or am I this person? Like it's a hard place to figure out which one are you actually going to be when you're in your downtime, your alone time. So I think that there's this authentic thing, to your point, that people don't even know who they are. How do they even start to figure that out? Like come to you and have a session, or where do we go to kind of dig into our own graveyard of, again, baggage that we all have?
Yeah, honestly, I mean that's sort of the premise, I think, for me and my work is like, come to a session and let's talk about it. Because like I said, a lot of the times it's like everything I'm looking at in the chart is it's polarity. It's like there's no, I think people are like, oh my god, like the therapy thing, like, oh, I don't want to face that stuff. I'm like, actually, there's not really a lot to face. It's sort of like, I'll be talking through things and you're like, oh yeah, I do that, and I'm like, okay, but also this is the high expression of that same thing. What's sort of, I don't want to say the good or the bad side, but it's like two sides of the same coin. Which side are you gonna choose? And then all of a sudden you're like, wait, I can take all these things that I previously thought were not my best qualities and really just shine them up and turn around and you're like, those are actually my greatest qualities if I'm just, again, using them in the correct consciousness and sort of going about my life in that way. So it's like I could play the character or I could just be like the real version of that character, which there's going to be real pieces of that within you. And again, do it from a place that feels really good, feels very true to who you are.
Well, I'm a big believer. People who know me or work with me, I love Strengths Finder, that book. I'm sure you've heard of it. I believe that working on your weaknesses is like a waste of time. Like working on weaknesses, like what's the point, guys? It's already a weakness for you. Why don't you make your strengths stronger? So even in our company here, we have to certainly do corrective behavior and coaching. I don't mean don't do that, but I believe that you flex into things that you're already good at and make those sort of the cornerstone of your career, of your life as a mother, as a wife, all the things that you're doing, and play to your strengths. I feel like what you gave me in that session even was, here's your list of strengths, the things that you naturally do really well because of some reason, right? And some inherent, like pre-coded reason why you do these things better. Go do those things and do more of them in abundance, and you'll have more rewards long term. You'll have more fruits of your labor. Versus therapy is like, these are all the things in your life that are going really wrong. Let's figure out how to make them go less wrong. It's such a different mentality that people open up, I think, when they get this idea of let's make the good better. It's just, it feels different than, to your point, going to therapy. And I think even in the beauty industry, when you go to have an injection or you go to have a laser, it's like, huh, you look old, let's look less old, versus let's make the best version of you be even better. I think even that, how you frame that conversation as a provider, BDD and things like that, is incredibly important. The words, the semantics, all that means so much to people who are hanging on to your every word to feel validated and justified in living their life. So I don't know, it just gave me a lot of insight that I just feel like people should be going out right now to Vagaro, I think is on your Instagram, and booking their session like in this moment, like right now, guys. Don't wait, don't delay.
Yeah. And I love what you even said, using the word validated, because that is what a lot of people are looking for. And you're like, I can do that. I can put the Band-Aid on, with another laser, another injectable or something, or I can really make this person feel it from the inside out. And then everything you kind of do, from there, you're like, I'm now when I go, and actually I'm going to be getting something done here this week, you're like, I go to my appointment now and I'm like, I'm putting the cherry on top. I'm not using this though to sort of hang my hope and my self-worth on. And that's a really different place to come from. And not selling to somebody's pain points per se, and that is that's the way that it's done, versus I'm going to, I don't know, just truly make them feel even better. Because everybody gets into this field like, I want to help people, I want to make them feel pretty, and I'm like, okay, but are you really, like I don't know. Like, it goes deeper than that.
Well, interesting discussion. This is like totally off topic, but I'm going to bring it. I'm going to throw it out there for you because I think it does impact injection clinics and how they think about stuff. We're at AM Spa this past weekend, and one of my teammates says, why do you get injected? And I'm like, well, because it makes me feel better. Like, I feel better when I'm my best self. And I feel like when I look less tired, I present better as a person, right? I feel like when I look better, I do better. Like, look good, do good. It's kind of my mentality in life. So I do it because I want to do it. Like, I don't give a damn. It's because I like it and it's for me. And she was like, well, don't you feel like revengeful or resentful about that? That the society's making you do it? And I was like, it's not society making me feel good. It's me making me feel good. It's not the audience that's watching me saying, gosh, she looks old. It's me saying, man, I look old. I want to fix that because it's better for me. We get this discussion about people coming in for injections because their spouse, is looking at younger girls or prettier girls, or their friends look better in the tennis game, and all these reasons why people do all these things. And it was like, you don't really have to have a reason. Just because you want to go show up and get toxin because you look like you feel like you need to get your wrinkles to go away. Like, I think we've made it where you have to have some reason now. There's got to be an impetus for you to go into a clinic, and your girlfriends will say, gosh, why'd you do that? I don't know, because I wanted to. Didn't need a reason. And I think people are scared to say that. Like, they feel shallow, or they need to say, oh, because so and so said I should, or gosh, this is the reason why. Like, they need to almost apologize for the fact that they want to look good. And so I don't know your thoughts on that, but as a person who, was an esthetician, a historical, like traditional esthetician, now coming into this, what are your thoughts on that from a clinic standpoint? How do you kind of combat that?
Oh gosh, I completely subscribe to what you're saying. I mean, like I said, I'm over here preaching like inner beauty and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, in conjunction with, like doing the things that make, like I want the inside and the outside both. Because I'm like, yes, when you look good, you feel good. And when you feel good, you do good. And like, if I still don't feel good, I'm not going to be kind of approaching all of my life. I think that's it. When you think that word holistic, it doesn't just mean one piece, it means all the pieces. Like, I want to feel good because I want to go out, I want to stop actually sort of having hangups about my appearance. And then to me, that's really kind of in a weird way, a lot of it, where you're like, you're looking for a freedom. Say somebody who's an acne patient and they're like, the acne is holding them back from ever doing XYZ. And you're like, okay, well, we clear that. And now all of a sudden you feel this freedom to be able to go out, be photographed, like, don't have to have the concealer on. You're like, that you gave somebody something there. So again, when we're looking at in this context of like, okay, I get the stuff done and yet there's still something lacking in me. I'm like, I want to give you the freedom that you're like, I know I look good because I've got all this taken care of. And then I also feel really good. And now I just have that freedom to go live my life and not be so hung up on every little teeny tiny thing. It's like, that's the thing you want to, I know genuinely for me, I'm like, I want to pop in the office and be like, okay, Josh, do whatever you got to do for me, or, whoever's working on me, like, just do it. I trust you, but I have the me piece taken care of, and so it works synergistically.
Well, you said in the beginning that patients who come in and you do all the work, they look fantastic, but they're still not happy. I feel like to tackle that, what we just discussed, is your only option to kind of get through that whole piece, because you can be an amazing injector, an amazing esthetician, a brilliant surgeon, and do the most incredible work ever, and patients still hate you. Like, they're not happy, they're upset, it's not enough. And it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with them and their issues and their concerns. So I think as a clinic looking at what you're doing, what you're offering, it's like we should all be adopting some of this into our practices in general, because until we understand that part of what sort of compels a human to do things and like what they're longing for, it's hard to fix their problems, right? It's hard to give them what they want if you have no idea what they actually want, because that wrinkle, fixing it may not be it. To your point, you get freedom from that. It's like, well, but I'm still not happy. Well, okay, next problem. I feel like it's one of those things. Okay, swipe left, next problem, next problem. I think that there's just some piece of this as an industry until we get our hands around it. We're going to have this BDD, all these things happening. We just had, Miss USA just jumped off of a building in New York 3 days ago, who had what looked like a perfect life, beautiful, intelligent, great career, but something kept her up at night, right? Something was eating at her soul. And if someone would have just asked her and done something, some way to get through to her, maybe not that severe, but these kinds of things to at least uncover what's underneath the hood, I think it's a much better place for all of us to be in, personally.
Oh, 100%. I think like I said, it just gives you this validation of like, I'm not just the external, and that is the temporary part of it. If you want to get really spiritual with it, you're like, this is that thing that's very transitory. It's eventually dust in the wind. You're like, I put so much effort into like my physical body, and I'm not tending to like my mental, spiritual, emotional health. And that can't be overlooked. And I think just we as a society, we as an industry really do gloss over that. Like, we've got to figure that out. We've got to come full circle and really help people truly from the inside out, and not because this is going to stop like bringing revenue in for all the other things you do. I'm like, I want healthier people visiting the clinic. You don't want people that are coming in upset with you even though you did beautiful work. My old plastic surgeon that I used to work for, a shout out to Dr. Wheeler, his whole thing was like, some of my least happy patients are my best results. It's like the people that have the most amazing outcome and they're still not happy. Well, why are they still not happy? Right? It's like, because it's an inside job. It's not about what you did. It's about them and them not feeling 100%.
And what if you have the power to say in that moment, you're not ready for me yet? I need you to go do some work on you. And when you come back and you feel like you've done that work and you're ready to be at a place that you're at peace with yourself, I'm here to make you have the best boobs on the planet or the best butt on whatever it is, but you're just not ready for me yet. And I think there's a part of it where, it's revenue driven, right? Like, I'm scared to say no to patients. That's why the whole BDD thing is coming up now. Cause like, gosh, I want them the revenue. They keep wanting to get injected, but you're never going to get there with them. But to have the freedom to say, I want to tell you no and take a pause, go see Mikaela or whoever's in your clinic doing these kinds of things, or even a therapist, whomever it may be, go see that person. And then when you're ready for that, I'm here for you. But until then, it's a hard pass for me. And I think we've got to kind of get there and make more ethical decisions, if you want to call it that. That's a kind of a tough word to use, but there is a part of ethics to that, right? Of saying, I know the patient can't handle this right now, I'm doing it anyway. That's on you, Not that your surgeon did that. I don't mean that by any means, guys. If you're don't read into that. But I think we don't know oftentimes about patients. We don't know until they come back and they complain. They look so good. You're like, what's going on here? We didn't hear the cues. We didn't ask the questions. We didn't get the signs, and we did it anyway. And then now we're paying for it on the back end. Disputes and credit card issues and bad reviews on Yelp and the whole shebang.
Yeah. Well, and from what I know as well, it's like, say, let's take plastic surgery. Years ago, let's say even a few decades ago, I think there was a way bigger psych component to treating patients that, I mean, are you kidding me? That like doesn't exist now. Like, and I would see it with my doctor. I just loved it. Would go around and you could just see the wheels turning, where he was like, you're looking at that patient like, oh my gosh, yes, a rhinoplasty, like that would be beautiful on this person. And he would just be like, and eventually by the end of it, talk them out of it. And I was like, we'd go out of the room and I'd be like, okay, tell me, like, give me the thought process on that. And I was just always like I said, I'm a people studier. I love to look at that stuff, and was just so fascinated at him really like saving himself, knowing that he could do an amazing surgery on that person, give them beautiful results, but knowing from an ethical standpoint of like, I will do this and this person is not going to be happy because they themselves are not happy. And I was like, I don't know, it was just like light bulbs went off for me. And I was like, wow, this is something that I really want to, that's a road that I want to go down.
That's the danger in normalizing aesthetics. The more we've normalized it, the less we have caution, right? Because we're like, oh, everyone's doing it. It's the thing now. Of course, you're going to get, Botox, whatever it is you're going to get. I think the normalization of it has made us less fearful, even as providers, to even ask questions because we feel like everyone knows coming into this, right? They've done their research. People are informed now. It's like, yeah, but they've been obsessing over that for 6 months, waiting to come in for you. And they're, and they come in with, I want this, and this many units. I want it here, I want here, I want it. It's like, whoa, pump the brakes. You're a little too engrossed in this. Let me help you kind of back out for a second, take the forest and the trees kind of view, and then we'll start again. But I think we see that now more than ever, to your point, and people aren't really focusing on it much because we just expect that people already know, right? Like, oh, you're here, it's easy. So there's a risk factor, if you want to call it that.
Oh, I think big time. And just, that personal responsibility of, caring for the whole patient. Like, I'm not here just to inject you. And, being very, very cognizant, I think, of what you say to people, because you have no idea what's going, one word comes out of your mouth and it could not be in a negative context at all. And somebody will kind of mentally snatch that up and then hang on to it, and you've created something, and it just gosh, it's like just treading with more caution, because yeah, every day you turn the corner and there's another med spa popping up on, in a strip mall or something. You're like, that's a lot of power, and people put a lot of even, they put a lot of trust in those providers and think that this is a medical procedure, this person knows what they're doing. And you may know, you may be amazing at what you're doing, but that bedside manner isn't necessarily where it should be. And again, not from any, like, nothing malicious, but just not knowing how to really, like, speak to people and make them feel good about themselves in those ways. Because again, if you're poking at a pain point to sell more things, you could actually wind up damaging that person, very, very deeply, and causing a lot more issues than necessary.
Well, as I think about this, I often wonder, and people are going to think I'm crazy, but if as we do all these injectable clinics and we teach people, we train them, we should have like a psychology of aesthetics also. Like, I feel like you should have to devote the same kind of hours to learning about your patient and treating them, to your point, bedside manner, where they are in their mental journey, their physical journey, their spiritual journey. I just think that we're missing this component of being a great injector is simply not enough. I look at Josh, for instance. If you guys don't know, Mikaela works at ToxJosh Studios with Josh Davis, who's a dear friend of mine and also a very spiritual person who's on his own journey. He's very public about his journey from, coming out as a child to the kind of growing up in Tennessee. And I look at him and think, a patient in his chair is so much better off because he is so empathetic to their cause and like what they're going through, no matter what it may be in their journey, because he knows it, he feels it, he lives it every day. And I think about, as a patient coming into that kind of a practice, I want to be there because someone there is like pouring into me, not just giving me a great lip injection, but pouring into me as a human. And I think about practices who have that kind of spiritual aura, if you want to call it, to use one of your words, the aura around the practice of like, this is your home, it's like a beacon symbol in the night. Come here, come here. It's a different vibe than saying I'm going to go to Jane down the street who's great at Botox, but boy, she's in, she's out, she's done. Quick and dirty. It's a different retention strategy for patients. When you feel their pain, you live with them, and I know it's exhausting for him. I'm sure it is for me. I'm an empath, and it's hard to hear people's feelings. And like, I'm so tired at the end of the day of hearing everyone's feelings because I feel everything for everyone. But it makes you a much better injector, a better healthcare provider when you can do that. I don't know what your thoughts. You came from a practice recently to Josh's studio. How's it different there versus like places you've been historically?
I just, even you talking about Josh kind of like got me a little bit, like, I'm getting a little choked up the way you're describing, because it's like those of us that, and again, I mean, it shows in your human design chart, like, especially emotional empathy, and those of us that really feel into other people. Yes, super draining. And that's one of the things I really do kind of help aesthetic professionals with, is like, okay, we need to sort of work on the energetic hygiene, is how I like to describe that. Because, it's like, yes, it's theirs, you're going to feel it, but it's not mine. And I dealt with years of that before I was really aware of what to do there. But working with Josh and everybody at the practice, it's just amazing. I mean, it's just a completely different vibe and attitude. And truly, like, I mean, it sounds so funny, but it's like that radiating love, and that's what I feel, how I said that aesthetic professionals, like, we're all healers, no matter what you're in medicine. that really that's what you're doing, but ultimately I think that's what we're trying to give people, and we're trying to give it to them in all sort of other means, and get money in exchange for it, when really it's like a lot of times people just want to be cared for. They want to be cared for, they want to be seen, they want to feel loved. And when you come into a practice like that, last time I was down there, it's like, oh, just people are so happy when they go in, and then I'll be there, again next week, and it just they're just lit up because I think they know they're going to come into contact with somebody or people, multiple people that truly have their best interests at heart, that really radiate that positive energy. And it is a totally different feeling being somewhere like that than other places that I've been in the past.
Well, I'm seeing even in how you guys are marketing as a business. For those of you who are thinking about the business aspect of this, I'm seeing from the ToxJosh Studios Instagram, the way that you guys have your website laid out, that this is really in the forefront. Like he's really pushing this, as an owner, saying this is important to us as a practice. We believe in this concept. We want you to buy into it as well as a patient. Like I think you guys are leading with this versus it being like this extra thing that you do. Like, oh, you can book a design session. Human design's extra here. It's like we're leading with this idea that your spiritual hygiene, gosh, I love that. Your energy or energetic hygiene is a critical part of your journey at our med spa. And so kind of walk us through that, as we kind of wrap up here at the end of, if I'm going to do this as a med spa, like I want to learn, I want to go figure out how to become you when I grow up. Like, does everything have to change in the spa? Do we have to figure out how to talk about things differently and market differently? Do we need to change our design inside the practice and get feng shui? Like, what's the actual like logistical part of this coming to fruition?
I laugh you saying the feng shui thing because that's part of like when I'm working on my course, I'm like, that is actually an aspect. Let's feng shui your treatment room. But I think looking through it is like, again, identifying who you really are and leading with that, because that's kind of the cool thing. I say mention my design, look at Josh and Mackenzie and Ryan, everybody that's there, and you're like, it's not inauthentic. This isn't like we're gonna start talking about this stuff and this is what we're gonna pretend to be. It's like, no, this is actually who these people are, and they're just putting that at the forefront. You're exactly right. It's not the extra tacked on behind. It's like, no, this is right out in the front of things. But I think that's always important, and like operating from that place of authenticity, no matter what it is. But I think that as practices start to fold these things, and it is just wellness overall, there's a lot more of that being brought into practices in general. I think that this is the next frontier personally. And what's really cool is, of course, knowing everybody's chart, but especially Josh, is like he is somebody who is meant to be a like basically like a trendsetter, like someone who has a voice and people will listen to. And again, that individual energy that I was talking about, where you're like, I can't help it, I have to be myself and I have to be unique. He has it as well. And he and I both share my one thing that I have, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we just get each other on like this cellular level. And it's like, we need to start with a self-love. Truly, it's from a self-love place. It's like when I start to love myself, I give other people permission to do the same thing, whether they know it or not, whether I talk about it or not. My energy gives that off to other people. And he has it, and that. You're like, yes, when he's feeling so good, it's just like it radiates out. You can't help but feel that rub off on you. And so I think when you get people in the right places, you get them in the right mindset, your staff itself, like, whoa, okay, we have 3, 4 estheticians, but you know what? Look at what everybody sort of specializes in, what they're good at. Now people don't feel like they're stepping on each other's toes, and they feel like I can go out and I have attraction marketing. I can have the patients that are really meant for me, and I don't have to worry about if somebody else went and saw one of the other girls. Maybe they're better suited for each other. And then once you start sort of from the internal place and then branch out, bringing that out to patients, it's like you being the best you gives other people permission to be the best them and to be the happiest them and love themselves, because you're sort of modeling that for them. And again, trying to tie it back there, it's like when you see Josh doing that, you're like, yes, okay, this person is completely, he always says, unapologetically himself. You're like, whoa, I want some of that. And like if you can give your patients that is something that is, it's not tangible, you don't charge for it, but it is a different type of thing that they feel, and they won't feel it walking into another person's practice. I mean, they could, if everybody's doing this, but it's like if you are an early adopter and you get on this and actually have people feeling better about themselves, not from the external but from the internal, like you've won the game.
Yeah, I love what you just said about doing what you do best and the attraction marketing side of that. I think about in a med spa where you have multiple estheticians, multiple injectors. We're all doing the same thing on each other's toes, stepping on each other, to get the best results. If we all did our thing that we love most, that we're best at, that really fulfills us, would it be a different spa? Would it have a different, vibe? Would it be a different energy in the room? Because you walk into some places and you feel the black cloud. I think the black cloud's very real, by the way. People who don't believe that, the black cloud for me is tangible. I can see it hanging over people's houses or their businesses. And I think to the credit of what you're saying with attraction marketing and doing what you want to do, the black cloud starts to disseminate when everyone there is living their best life, living, that's such a millennial thing to say, but kind of in their YOLO moment, right? Doing what they want to do and doing it well. It's a different energy than when you go in and everyone's like a robot or a drone, having to do all the things all the time, keep up, do the rat race. Like what Ashley said, the rat race is exhausting. And so, you're the right puzzle piece in the right place now where you can really take off and run and do the things that you're doing well. And I'm seeing it even in Josh and Mackenzie, and as the clinic is growing and changing, I'm watching that sort of radiate through all the things that you guys are doing. And it's very apparent that all of you are fitting together so beautifully versus where you all came from before, which were all awesome spas. All of you kind of came from different places together to make this one big thing, and it shows. I'm seeing it firsthand, and I love to see it. So kudos to all of you for coming together and doing this really, really well. You're a great role model for all of us.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful to hear, because I think that's exactly it. It's like you kind of know when you're with the right. There's a quote. It's like the right people feel different to your nervous system. You're like, oh yes, I can just relax around these people. I love these people, and that is a completely different thing. When everybody gets to be themselves, and you just click. And you're, I don't know, there's just a funny thing, like behind the scenes, we're all like, we just know, like, this is magical. Like, good things are happening.
When people say, "Oh, she's a try hard," yeah, because she doesn't fit here. I want to say that all the time. Like, yeah, she's having to try really hard because this isn't where she belongs. And for her to survive here, she has to try really, really hard, and she's probably exhausted at the end of the day because she's tried so hard all day long to fit there, to fit with you. So I think that there is this, persona here that you've got to just suck it up, buttercup, and get it done. And maybe that's not for everyone. Maybe that's at the end of the day not the right path, guys. Do lean into what you feel best about, I think is what I'm hearing. And so much this lean into what feeds you as a human and go do more of that thing.
Oh yeah, yeah. And who wants to spend their days like that? I'd much rather be happy. I mean, as simpleton as that sounds, is like, I just want to be happy, and I know what makes me happy is just feeling like myself, feeling accepted for that, for who whatever it is I am, and being able to kind of like share that with other people. And again, it's just that permission slip that sort of rolls on to everybody.
Oh, Michaela, I'm shocked it's been a whole hour that we've been talking. Like, I can't even believe that. But I want to make sure before we go that we tell everyone who's listening where to find you to go book their own session, and also how to get in touch with you about classes and learning more about this to bring it into their own spa. So give us all your details for how to get in touch with you.
Well, like you mentioned, I work with Josh at ToxJosh Studios. My Instagram is usually the best way to find me. I'm just at Mikaela MacLean. And from there, links, all over the place, working on a digital course because I do want to get this in the hands of aesthetic providers so that they can learn high level stuff, bring a lot more of that holistic, not just human design, but, I think I mentioned before we got on, tuning forks and different things that really help people feel amazing. And they're just little additions to your practice, very easy to bring into whatever you're already doing. So it's not a complete overhaul, just more of good stuff. And then Ashley, my good friend Ageless Ashley and I are working on a project ourselves to be able to go into practices. And she has her beautiful system of her ageless facial and me bringing human design, helping the clinic, the group work better together. And marketing, or kind of everything we've talked about, sort of bringing that into individual practices on the two of us actually going there and working with people from both clinically, hands-on, the classroom, kind of all the bits and pieces together. So those are my two sort of behind the scenes projects that we're working on right now. And yeah, it's like it's all there and available. Instagram.
Well, and as it comes to fruition, let us know, because we'll be posting about it and giving you guys access to find out how to get more details. Because I think this is going to be a hot topic, and I would love to be able to help connect anyone out there who wants to know how to how to do this, or even to experience it themselves. Because I'm telling you guys, you will not regret it. You have got to do it, and hopefully you'll be at Aesthetic Next this year again to give us some great insight and information like you were last year. So, the invitation is open, my friend, to come on over.
Definitely plan on it. Would love to be there.
Well, for the record, you have been a fabulous, insightful, peaceful, spiritually wonderful guest today. And I'm so glad to have you on our show. And guys, like I said, go follow Mikaela, get her information, and have a blessed, wonderful, peaceful day, all. And we will see you next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.